STARS is a doctoral training centre for PhD students. It trains PhD students explicitly in soil science, and we're bringing all the students together in a kind of virtual college.
Not every single PhD student wants to be an academic, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think for a lot of PhD students, it's not their chosen route. So we want to kind of give the students the skills to go out into industry or go into policy and really communicate their research.
Once you've prepared your presentation, go through it and reduce it by 50%. And then, when you finish mourning for that 50%, reduce it by another 50%.
They've realised that they've got a big idea and they've got a story within their research that actually has got meaning in the world. So they can talk about what they're working on in a way that other people can understand it, that isn't filled with scientific jargon, that engages people and shares their ideas and enables them to bring others with them.
Earth is the only planet in the solar system that's not named after a god or goddess. It's named after one of the most essential components in our world, the soil, the ground underneath our feet.
Certainly asking them to think about the perspective of the listener or the other person when they're making a presentation. So we talk about things like how you treat other people. It's not treating other people the way that you think they want to be treated, it's about treating them the way that they want to be treated.
So the darker the blue is, that's the bigger phosphorus deficiency in the soils.
Yes, I'm from a long line of family farmers. There's a real issue between getting that knowledge transfer between the researchers and the end users, really. One of the main barriers is actually just communicating it, I think, using language that people can understand and not getting so bogged down in the stats and things behind the science.
We've organised 3 students now have placements with government, so we've got 2 with DEFRA, 1 with the House of Lords.
So I went on placement to the House of Lords Library, and that was based in Westminster Palace. I met a whole range of people, so committee specialists, policy advisors and things like that, and the way in which they communicate the research was different from what I'm used to, because they communicate it in a lay sense, so the policy makers can take that information and shape and begin to make policy. Yeah.
I think as academics we have a tendency to really focus on the detail and really in depth, and I think when it comes to policy making it tends to be broader. So I think there's a bit of a conflict there, and I think learning how to communicate the very specific to someone who wants to hear the very general is a key skill.
Academics can either ask their own question, do their own research, and then present the results as this startling insight into the world, and it might well be, but it's not framed in a question that a policymaker or practitioner would look at. Or they might not think about how they could engage in the real world questions that should drive research and does drive increasingly research, which looks at the big challenges and the big issues that society faces going forward.
So I work quite a lot with farmers, and so you need to be able to not use really technical jargon when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions and things. You just need to be able to straightforward say, yes, this way increases greenhouse gas emissions. If you farm this way, it decreases greenhouse gas emissions in the samples that I've tested. Whereas in a briefing maybe for Parliament, what I just said in 3 sentences, maybe in a 20 or 30 page document. So it's very different stakeholders want the information in different ways.
I think when people talk about communicating with different people often talk about jargon being a problem. But I think more often than that, it's your different views on what is right or what is rigorous or what is certain. And it's your different views on how you see certainty. So as academics, we're trained to be very rigorous and very certain, and then in the policy world, you simply do not have that opportunity to be certain about every policy you make. And I think that is perhaps more of a challenge than the jargon, because we can all define the words we use.
Through my own PhD as well, I worked in industry during my PhD, and there is a really big contrast between the 2 worlds of academia and industry, and you've got to be able to switch. And sometimes you just think to yourself, yes, I'm taking my academic hat off here and I'm going to put my business hat on, and therefore I need to communicate more effectively and break it down. And it's not necessarily dumbing down your research or making it simpler, it's just adapting it to the audience, and that's the key skill that you need to get as a PhD student if you want your research to be effective and really reach the wider audience.
You need to ensure that you speak in language that the government uses or understands, and use government paradigms and then the message begins to feel familiar and safe to them because it's using words and phrases and concepts that they know and they're familiar with. And I think that's a real art, just as it's an art writing an academic paper, it's a real art communicating well with policymakers.
The interesting thing about PhDs these days is they know it's a tough world out there when they finish, so they're thinking about their future careers in more and more subjects. More and more PhDs don't go into university research and teaching, they go into policy, they go into industry.
We have a view and a philosophy that we are encouraging where we mix the academia with business, with entrepreneurs, to have a real sense of partnership so that the students can learn about science, to learn to be scholars, but also learn to be entrepreneurs and policymakers at the same time.
They're with STARS for around 3 to 4 years during their PhD, but there's a massive world out there beyond that PhD, and a PhD is an achievement in itself, but using it's an even bigger achievement and a greater satisfaction.